I stayed silent for nearly 2 decades, and now I can't anymore. At 75, I have to speak up for myself and for everyone the truth about my marriage to Agnetha Fältskog. I know people think we were Sweden's fairy tale couple. You think Dancing Queen is a song about everlasting love? That when the lights went out, we still held hands, smiling like in those old photos? No. Behind the melodies that captivated the world were tears, silence, and wounds no one could see. There were nights I stood on stage, my voice trembling, afraid I'd break down crying in the middle of a song he wrote. There were mornings I watched him walk out the door, taking the music with him, leaving behind a woman who still believed love could save everything. I used to think I was strong. I used to believe marriage was a safe place. But with him, it felt like a silent love song. Nothing but notes that cut straight into the heart. Today I'm going to reveal 5 tragedies that have never been told about my marriage to Björn. Tragedies that broke my heart, shook Hollywood, and made the whole world wonder. Does the perfect man everyone admires really exist? The only question is, do you have the courage to hear me through to the end? I met Björn on a spring afternoon in 1969 during a small Swedish television show. I was 19 back then, blonde hair, light blue dress, and a heart that still believed in everything beautiful. He walked into the backstage area with a guitar in his hand, a charming smile, and eyes so bright I had to look away. No one knew that just minutes later my fate would change. Forever. We did a test duet of a song called Isn't It Easy to Say? He played the harmony, I sang, and the entire room fell silent. After the recording, he said to me, "I've never heard anyone sing with their whole heart like you do." I smiled and softly replied, "And I've never met anyone who could make me forget the lyrics mid-song like you." That was the beginning. Simple, pure, and dangerous. In the following months, we sang together at small clubs around Stockholm. Björn always walked me in through the back, avoiding the female fans waiting at the door. He held my hand tightly, as if afraid someone might take me away. I thought that was love. Looking back now, maybe that was the first sign of a love that wanted control. In July 1971, we got married. The wedding took place by Lake Virka in the middle of a crystal-clear Nordic summer. I wore a white dress and he played guitar singing "I Am Just a Girl" to me. We both believed we were living inside an endless song, but even at the wedding, I saw other eyes watching him. Women are always drawn to men who shine, and Björn, though not yet world famous, already had that glow. I told myself, it's okay as long as he's still looking at me. I didn't know then. The brighter the light, the longer the shadow. In 1972, Björn met Benny Andersson. The two talked about a new band project, something the world would later know as ABBA. They needed 2 female voices, me and Annie Friedrich Lyngstad. We started rehearsing together in a small room surrounded by music and laughter. Björn wrapped his arms around me from behind and whispered, "We're going to change the world." Agatha, I believed him. I believed in the music. I believed in the dream. Then Waterloo was born. In 1974, we won Eurovision. We became a phenomenon. Overnight, all of Europe knew the name ABBA, and I, the girl in the middle, blonde hair, sweet smile, became the angel of the North. I remember that moment. The blinding lights, the cheering crowd, Björn holding me tight. I cried, not from joy, but from fear. I didn't know if I had just reached the top or started to fall. The years that followed brought wave after wave of success. The press praised us as the golden couple of Swedish music. We traveled the world from London to Tokyo, from New York to Paris. People said they were born to sing together, live together, love together. But when the music stopped, I'd see him sitting alone, writing songs with a distant look in his eyes. I asked, "What are you thinking about?" He answered, "The next song, always the next song." That's when I realized music would always come before love in his life. And I, the woman he once promised to hold hands with forever, was just one melody in his endless chord progression. On December 31st, 1975, when ABBA performed Mamma Mia on the New Year's Eve stage in London, I saw him look at me. His smile still bright, but his eyes had changed. Colder, farther away. We sang for millions, but I knew the song had ended long ago. No one had been brave enough to say it out loud. I looked away, but his voice still echoed in my mind. We've done it all before, and now we're back to get some more. Yes, we were back to get some more. More success, more applause, and more cracks that no audience could ever see. And that was the moment I realized what we were living wasn't love anymore. It was a perfect chord, beautiful, powerful, but hollow inside. I didn't know that just a few years later, those very songs would become the weapon that shattered my marriage, and the most victorious song of my life would be "The Winner Takes It All." The years after our 1974 Eurovision win were the brightest and also the darkest of my life. The whole world cheered, calling ABBA a Nordic miracle. Every time I stepped on stage, I saw tens of thousands singing along, crying, dancing, believing we were the embodiment of joy and happiness. But inside, I knew we were performing. In 1975, ABBA released our second album. I still remember the night we recorded Mamma Mia in Stockholm. The smell of damp rain, cold coffee, and Björn's laughter echoing through the glass of the studio booth. He was completely immersed with Benny, the two of them writing, tweaking, dreaming. And I stood at the microphone trying to sing with a cheerful voice while my heart felt heavy. He loved music, I loved him, and those were two loves that never found the same rhythm. We started touring the world. England, France, Japan, the US. I carried our baby with me every night. As the roar of the crowd echoed through the venue, I smiled while our little one slept backstage. I was a singer, a mother, a wife, but I never felt whole in any of those roles. Björn always said, "You have to understand, music is my breath." I nodded, but deep down I wanted to ask, then what am I in that breath? We slowly became two parallel lives, close yet distant, talking, but no longer saying anything real. He started staying late at the studio, coming home in silence, carrying the scent of alcohol, rain, and sometimes unfamiliar perfume. I didn't ask, I just wrote in my journal. A line from 1976, the first page. Love doesn't die from a lie. It dies from silence that lasts too long. Then came Fernando, Dancing Queen. Knowing me, knowing you. The more success we had, the greater the distance between us became. I looked at him during photo oots. His smile was radiant, but my hand trembled slightly. People called us Sweden's golden couple, but no one knew that behind the camera, we no longer held hands. In 1977, the tour in Australia was the peak. Tens of thousands stood in the rain, waiting for ABBA to appear. I walked out on stage with my arm through his camera flashes lighting up like lightning strikes. We sang Knowing Me, Knowing You, a song about separation, but the crowd danced like they were celebrating love. I looked at him, forcing a smile, while tears welled up. When I reached the line, walking through an empty house, tears in my eyes, I heard my own voice tremble as if I were singing a prophecy for myself. That night, the hotel in Sydney was strangely quiet. I stayed up all night, opened the balcony door, and watched the rain fall onto the streets. Björn still hadn't come back. I looked in the bathroom mirror and saw a woman I didn't recognize. Hair tangled, dark circles under her eyes, lips pressed tight like trying to hold back something not yet spoken. I touched the mirror and whispered, "You're living inside your own song, Agnetha." By 1978, he and I barely spoke unless it was about work. We recorded the Voulez-Vous album, and to me, each song was another crack. Chiquitita, If It Wasn't for the Nights, I Have a Dream, all carried a sadness the audience couldn't see. In the studio, I tried to hit every note perfectly, hiding the hollow stares between us. One evening, while the group was having dinner together, Benny looked at me and said, "Agnetha, your voice is most beautiful when you're sad." That line stopped me in my tracks because it was true. Sadness had become my instrument, and the only person who made me sad was sitting right next to me. After dinner, I stepped outside. The air was so cold it turned my breath into mist. Björn followed, put a coat around me, but said nothing. The silence between us had grown so thick I could hear it cracking like ice. I wanted to ask him, "Are we still us?" But the words got stuck in my throat. We kept performing, kept standing side by side, kept playing the part of the perfect couple. And the audience believed it. They believed in something I no longer did. I learned to smile on cue, tilt my head at the right angle, answer interviews with rehearsed lines. We're still happy, thank you. Music keeps us together forever. I said it while my heart was as quiet as a locked room. Then one day, he came to me and laid a few sheets of music on the table. On them were the lyrics to a new song, The Winner Takes It All. He said, "I think you should sing this. No one else can sing it but you." I read each line, "The winner takes it all, the losers standing small." I looked up at him. That look, gentle but distant. I understood everything, and neither of us had to say a word. We recorded that song on a rainy morning in 1979. I stood in front of the microphone, my voice trembling, tears on my cheeks. Benny later said it was a once-in-a-lifetime recording, of course, because it wasn't a performance anymore. It was a goodbye sung between two people too afraid to say the word divorce. After that day, Björn and I lived like two ghosts under the same roof. He kept writing, kept smiling, kept walking on stage with me. But when the lights went out, we quietly turned our backs on each other. Once I caught him staring at our old wedding photo hanging on the wall. He softly said, "We were beautiful once, weren't we?" I replied, "Beautiful?" But that kind of beauty never survives applause. I left the room and closed the door gently. And I knew in that soft closing sound was the period at the end of our story. In the final days of 1979, we started talking about taking a break. No one said the word breakup. The group still showed up, still smiled, still sang Super Trooper in front of the cameras, but the way he and I looked at each other had changed. I looked down at the microphone, remembering the early years, remembering that performance of Isn't It Easy to Say in 1969, and realized, no, it's not easy at all. Saying it is easy. But living with someone when your hearts have already drifted apart, that's the hardest thing. I still hold on to that image in my memory. Our final show at Wembley, London. He turned to look at me under the flashing lights and smiled softly. I smiled back. No one knew. That was the last time we truly looked at each other as husband and wife. August 26, 1980, a gray summer morning in Stockholm. I woke up in an empty house listening to the soft tapping of rain on the window. The living room still held photos from ABBA's tour, the stage lights reflecting off the glass frames like forgotten memories. I made coffee but couldn't bring myself to drink it. Today we would sign the divorce papers. I looked down at my hands. Hands that once held a microphone, once held his in front of millions, now trembling so badly they couldn't even steady a piece of paper. Outside, the sky was overcast, the wind rustling through the pine trees. In a little while, Bernie would arrive. No more laughter, no more music, just the sound of his car pulling up like the final note in a song long over. When he walked in, I forced a smile. He nodded and said softly, "I think this is the best thing for both of us." I didn't answer. In my mind, old songs played. Melodies that were once promises, now just distant echoes. We sat across from each other. The lawyer read aloud the cold clinical lines. No one cried. No one said anything more. Only memories rushed in. That first night he played guitar and sang to me. The sound of the crowd applauding, the scent of his cologne, overnight flights, the hugs backstage. Everything was still there. Except love. Love had already gone. When it was over, he gently set the pen down and said, "You'll be okay, Agnetha. You're strong." I smiled, the smile the whole world knew, but inside it shattered like glass. If being strong means pretending it doesn't hurt, then yes, I'm strong. He looked at me for a long moment, then turned away. The door closed behind him, the sound of his car pulling away. I stood in the silence of the room, hearing my heart pound wildly in my chest. Outside, the rain began to fall harder. A few weeks later, I returned to the studio. Benny and Bern had finished writing The Winner Takes It All. They said it was just a song about a love that had ended. I held the sheet music and looked at the lyrics. I was in your arms thinking I belonged there. Building me a fence, building me a home. I read them and saw myself in every single word. Not a performance, not a melody, just truth. A truth written by his hand, but one I had to sing out loud for the entire world to hear. On the day of recording, the rain was pouring. The studio was freezing, the air filled with cigarette smoke and coffee. I stood at the microphone. The red light blinked on. The music began. Soft, slow, full of empty spaces. I closed my eyes and sang each line like it was slicing through my heart. The winner takes it all, the loser standing small. When the piano faded out, I opened my eyes. No one said a word. Bern stood behind the glass, his eyes filled with tears, but his face calm. I knew he was hurting too, in his own way, but that pain couldn't save anything anymore. One take, just one. Benny said there was no need for another. No one can sing that kind of emotion twice. I left the studio in the rain. The streets of Stockholm curled into the mist. I turned on the radio in the car and there was my voice. Distant, hollow, dissolving into the sound of rain. I couldn't bear it. I turned it off. In July 1980, the song was released. The world went wild. People called it the greatest breakup ballad of the century. Everyone praised me for singing with my soul. No one knew how torn that soul had been. The newspapers printed photos of me. Blonde hair, sad face, standing alone backstage. They wrote, "The song may be fiction, but her eyes tell the truth." I read it and smiled. They weren't wrong. The song might have been fiction, but my eyes, they never learned how to lie. On stage, I still smiled, still held his hand when the director said, "Smile" for the audience. We sang Super Trooper. Thank you for the music, lay all your love on me. The crowd stood cheering, but in the middle of all that light, I saw him looking somewhere else. One night in Zurich, after a show, I stepped out onto the hotel balcony. Down below, thousands of fans were still calling, "Agnetha, Agnetha." I smiled, waved, then closed the door behind me. The room fell silent. I sat down, took off my shoes, and let out a deep sigh. And I realized sometimes all the noise out there is just a cover for the emptiness inside. In 1981, we recorded our final album, The Visitors. No one said it, but we all knew it was the end. 4 people in one room, but each in their own world. Benny and Frida divorced too. There was no love left untouched in ABBA anymore. I sang Slipping Through My Fingers, a song about a mother watching her child grow up. And in every line, I saw myself, a mother trying to hold on to everything slipping through her hands. I didn't know if I was singing to my child or to the marriage that had already died. When the album was done, I left the studio and never went back. There was no farewell party, no goodbye speech. We just stayed silent like people who had sung for so long they had nothing left to say. After that, I stepped away from the stage. The world kept playing our music every day. Dancing Queen, SOS, Chiquitita, The Winner Takes It All. But I stayed quiet. I lived with my 2 children, avoided the press, avoided all the questions. People called me reclusive, strange, hard to understand. No one realized I was just trying to breathe again in a world without music. Sometimes late at night, I put on the old records and let my voice fill the room. And at times it sounded like someone else, another woman, younger, more hopeful, more in love. I sat still. I didn't cry. I just listened. Because in that voice I could hear everything. The beginning, the peak, and the end. In 1982, ABBA announced a temporary break. But in my heart, we had stopped long before. When people asked, I simply said, every piece of music needs an ending. The world was filled with regret, but I felt relief. For the first time in over a decade, I didn't have to smile on cue. I didn't have to stand beside the man I once loved and lost while pretending everything was fine. I moved to Eckerö Island on the outskirts of Stockholm. Every morning, I walked by the lake, the water still and clear like glass. Sometimes I'd see him bring the kids to play, their laughter echoing across the grass. I watched from a distance and smiled. No bitterness, just a gentle sadness, the kind that comes when you've learned that all beautiful things are temporary. Music. One day my daughter asked, "Mom, is The Winner Takes It All about you and Dad?" I held her close and softly replied, "No, sweetheart. It's a song about learning how to lose and still go on." Now looking back, I understand that The Winner Takes It All isn't just a song. It's a portrait of a life. Mine, his, of those who loved and lost under the lights. The winner doesn't truly win. The loser doesn't truly lose. Because in love, no one takes it all. We only share what remains. Pieces of memory left behind. I once stood in front of millions and felt completely alone. But today, when I hear that voice from long ago, I don't feel lonely anymore. I see a young woman who dared to love, dared to sing, dared to hurt, and dared to survive. I still remember that winter afternoon in 1982 when the 4 of us recorded our final melodies in the studio in Stockholm. Outside, the snow was falling soft as ash, landing on the glass and melting the moment it touched. Benny set his pen down and said in a low voice, "Maybe it's time." No one replied. We just looked at one another. 4 people who once made the whole world dance, now silent like the last fading notes of a song. Björn sat across from me, spinning a pen between his fingers, his eyes lost in the distance. I knew he was remembering the glory days. Waterloo, Fernando, Dancing Queen, the nights when the stage lights blazed, the cheers that never seemed to end. I remembered too, but in a different way. I remembered the way my heart fell out of rhythm. I remembered the moment his eyes stopped landing on me, even for a second. We sang about love when love was already gone. We smiled while our hearts quietly shattered. When the session ended, I left through the snow. No one said goodbye, but we all knew without needing to say a word. ABBA was over. In the years that followed, we each tried to move on in our own way. Benny found success in musicals. Frida moved to England, and Björn, the man I once believed I'd walk through life with, stayed in Stockholm and started a new life with someone else. I heard about it through a friend, and strangely, it didn't hurt. It just felt cold. People said he changed quieter, smiled less, but never stopped working. He still spoke about music the way others speak about faith. On TV and interviews, he always smiled calmly and said, "ABBA was the greatest miracle of my life." But I knew behind that smile was a man living with his own ghost. A part of our shared memory neither of us dared to name. I still saw him, not in real life, but on screen. In a 1985 television interview, the host asked, "If you could go back, what would you change?" He smiled, tilted his head gently, and said, "Maybe I'd write shorter songs. The longer they are, the more they hurt." I turned off the TV. That sentence echoed in my head all night, like a song that was never finished. Maybe he didn't mean it the way I heard it, but I knew in every note he ever wrote there was still a piece of us left behind. While he rebuilt his life, I began to learn how to live with silence. No more stages, no more tours, no more voices calling my name. Just me. A house by the lake and music, quiet as breath. I woke early each morning and walked through snowy woods, listening to my own footsteps on the frozen ground. During those years, ABBA all but vanished from public life. People called us the band that once existed like a miracle. But in my heart, it wasn't a miracle. It was a rainstorm, beautiful, fierce, and fleeting. Just long enough to take your breath away before it turned to mist. Björn kept writing. He wrote for films, for musicals, for a new generation. He got married, had children, and people said he lived a peaceful life. I believed that because if anyone deserved calm after the storm, it was him. Sometimes I saw photos of him in the papers holding his 2 little daughters. His smile so gentle it made my heart ache. Not from jealousy, but from memory. I remembered the man who once sat by the piano all night writing a melody and then turning to ask me, "Do you think the audience will feel this?" Now he still writes, but he no longer turns to ask anyone. In 1987, as the world stepped into a new era of pop music, the name ABBA remained locked in nostalgia. Record labels asked me about reunions, about returning to the stage, about the chance to sing one more time. I always said no. Not because I hated the past, but because I was afraid. I was afraid that if I sang again, I'd hear my own voice from all those years I'd lost. Björn said in an interview, "Music never dies, it just changes shape." I wanted to believe that, but I never had the courage to face the new shape of longing. Once I was invited to an honorary awards ceremony for Swedish artists. Björn was also being honored that day. I went, sat quietly in the back row. No one recognized me. When he stepped onto the stage, the whole room stood. He said, "We can't hold on to youth forever, but we can turn it into music." Everyone applauded. I applauded too. And in that moment, I felt a quiet warmth return to my heart. Because even though everything was over, he had kept the most important thing, his gratitude for what we once had. That evening, I returned home and opened the window to watch the snowfall in the sky. The distant lights of Stockholm reflected on the lake. Suddenly, I saw his image. Not the man from my memories, but the father, the musician, the man who had found peace. I smiled. Maybe in the end, music had saved him. As for me, I kept moving forward, not gloriously, not loudly. I learned to live slowly, wrote a few quiet songs, and taught singing to children in the area. Every time I sat at the piano, I could still hear him somewhere in my memory, a soft, low note that never completely faded. And I understood. Some people never truly leave our lives. They just change roles from lover to melody, from presence to memory. Björn still appears on shows. Silver hair, gentle smile. He speaks often about music, about youth, about the journey to rediscover faith. I watch from behind a screen and feel calm. We are no longer the young pair from the 70s, but 2 people who share the same memories, each holding half. No need to say it aloud. I know that if we ever meet again, we'll simply look at each other, smile, and quietly say, "Thank you. Thank you for loving, for hurting, for singing together, for making the world believe in something magical, even just for a moment. Thank you for leaving behind the music, the only thing that never betrayed anyone." Sometimes I sit by the window watching the sunset fall across Lake Echo, the sky stained red like the years gone by. I sing softly. No microphone, no audience, just the wind as my orchestra. The winter takes it all, but somehow the music stays. And in that moment, I know that even if everything has turned to ash, the music remains. It is the only thing still alive and the last thing that connects me to him. The man who was once my whole world and now is just a melody in my heart. I'm 75 now. I still wake up at 6 in the morning, just like I did 40 years ago. The only difference is that now no one is waiting for me in the studio. No one knocks on the door to hand me new sheet music, and no one asks if I'm doing all right. I often sit by the window holding a cup of tea, watching the first light of day slide across the surface of the lake. Some mornings are so peaceful that they scare me, because after so many years of noise, this silence feels both like a reward and a reminder that everything has truly passed. I no longer run away from music. Sometimes I play the old songs again. Fernando the Winner Takes It All slipping through my fingers, and I listen as if it were someone else's voice. At times, I can hardly believe that woman was me. That girl was young, radiant, full of faith. And now, all that remains is a rough voice, trembling hands, and a memory thin as smoke. But one thing hasn't changed. Whenever I listen, I still shiver. Not from pain, but from the realization that the music is still alive. Even though I have grown old, my 2 children are grown now, each with their own families, their own lives. They still visit me on holidays, bringing flowers and their little ones. When they laugh, I can hear the melody of the past. One day my son said, "You know, Mom, your songs are still playing in the cafe downtown. They don't know you're sitting here just a few miles away." I smiled and said, "And I don't need them to. At this age, I no longer need to be recognized. I just want to be at peace." Like the final note lingering after the audience has gone home. I used to fear aging, fear mirrors, fear seeing time printed on my face. Not anymore. I no longer look into the mirror to find the 20-year-old woman. I look to find the woman who learned how to survive everything. Sometimes I think that if I were young again, I would still make the same mistakes. Love too much, trust too quickly, sing as if there were no tomorrow. But if not for those mistakes, there would be no music and perhaps no me as I am today. My body isn't as strong as it once was. The doctor tells me to rest, to stay out of the cold, to take my medicine regularly. I smile because deep down I know the only thing I truly fear losing isn't my health. It's my memory. I'm afraid that one day I'll forget the first note I ever sang. Forget the look in his eyes when we wrote Waterloo. Forget the feeling of standing before thousands of people and knowing they were singing with me. But maybe even if memory fades, my heart will remember in its own way. Because some songs don't need memory. They live through the soul. I still see him sometimes at anniversary events or musical tributes. He's old now, hair white, eyes still bright, smile so gentle it makes me want to cry. We hug, exchange polite words that no one else can quite hear. I look at him and see my whole youth in those eyes. No pain, no regret, just a distant warmth. He asks me, "Do you still listen to music?" I answer, "I do, but I don't cry anymore." We both smile. The smile of two people who once loved, once lost, and once learned how to keep living. People still ask me, "If you could go back, would you choose differently?" I think for a moment, then shake my head. I wouldn't change a thing because even though there were dark days, nights when I thought I wouldn't make it through, all of it made me who I am today. And honestly, the most beautiful moment of my life wasn't victory. Wasn't the medals or awards, but that moment when I stood alone in the studio singing The Winner takes it all for the first time. Not for anyone else, but for myself. In that moment, I wasn't a wife. I wasn't half of a legendary band. I was just a woman trying to survive. And I did survive. Now, I spend my time reading books, walking around the lake, and teaching a few local children how to sing. Occasionally, someone recognizes me. They say, "You're a legend." I smile and gently shake my head. The legend is in the songs, not in the people. People grow tired, grow weak, forget things, and eventually fade away. But music doesn't. It continues, sung by younger voices on different stages in different generations. And that's how I go on living, even when I'm no longer here. Some nights I put on an old record, sit by the fireplace, and listen to the wind outside the porch. On the table are a few old photographs, me and him, the four of us laughing, stage lights glowing behind us. I don't remember where that photo was taken, only how I felt in that moment. I was happy without knowing it would be the last time. Time gives no warning. It just quietly takes everything until one day you open your eyes and realize you've reached the other side of the dream. At this age, I no longer dream of the future. I just want to hear the sound of the waves, the rustling leaves, and sometimes the sound of my own voice singing softly in the night. I'm not afraid of silence anymore. I've lived long enough to understand that sometimes silence is a song too. If anyone asks, I'll say I had a beautiful life. Not perfect, but beautiful. I loved. I lost. I sang. I cried. I heard my own voice echo inside someone else's heart. I was once the light, then became the shadow. And in the end, I chose to be the sunset. Something in between the two. I look out the window. The sky is turning purple. An old radio in the corner plays those same songs. My voice floating through the room, thin and soft like smoke. I smile quietly, whisper to myself, "Thank you, music. Thank you for not leaving me." Then I close my eyes, letting the song carry me through memory, through the past, through love, through pain, through it all. Because in the end, even if the winner takes it all, music is the one thing no one can ever take away. And I, the one who once sang, once loved, once shattered, am still here in every note of it. Music, 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 heat, heat.